Now, to something about Wicklow. A new online documentary is revealing some of Wicklow's darkest history. Author of The Promise Maker, George Fitzgerald, uncovers Wicklow's workhouses and various other things that maybe we're not so proud upon. On the line, I'm joined by the director, George Fitzgerald. Hi, George.
How's it going there, Declan?
Good, man. How's it going yourself?
You know yourself, just taking the boy and doing what we can in this situation we all find ourselves.
Indeed. Well, best of luck with that. We're all in the same boat. We're all in it together, George. That's the main thing. Listen, before we talk about the documentary, perhaps a little biog of yourself. You have a history and, you're in entertainment. So tell us more.
Yeah, well, I was a Dublin manager, and I was born, we grew up in Ballymun, the flats of Ballymun as a kid, and then moved to South Inglis in 1973, grew up there, and we became involved in boxing, myself, my brother, my twin brother, my late twin brother, Joseph. Anyway, what happened then was we started a band called the DLF Runners, which is an interesting thing for Wicklow, because we were spotted by our manager in Bray. We were playing with Something Happens back in the late 1988 or something, and we were playing with Something Happens in an open air gig, and our manager, who was a Bray man, Peter Farrell, he's in the music business, he happened to came along, and he spotted us, and hence really the progression of what took place then, meeting Louis Walsh, and he was our agent, and then going on to have 3 hit singles, but it all started in Bray.
Fantastic, George. Yeah, and of course, well, the talent was there in the beginning anyway, from Ballymun and South Inglis, so well done. So is the music no more at the moment?
No, that's gone since the whole, that would have been gone in the middle of 1996, around that time. Supposedly, again, we were supposedly, I've been asked this question also, we were supposedly the inspiration for the film, the book, the Roddy Doyle's book, Commitment, supposedly. There's a lot of rumours about that. And then what happened there was that when the film came out, we were sort of branded as, Gabe Bowen said in the Late Late Show, the real life commitment. So then all of a sudden we became the real life commitment. So it really brought us off into a different lane. We weren't travelling up that particular lane. We were going up our own lane where we had 3 hit singles that were original songs. And then we were sort of pushed into a place where we were doing cover versions. Anyway, cut a long story short, just like our fictional counterparts in the film, Airland was very similar, so we broke up eventually, you know.
And, but are you all still friends?
Yeah, we are really family. My wife stand up a chair, she played saxophone. My brother Joseph, my late brother, he was my twin brother, he was the lead singer. My other brother, Pat Fitzgerald, he was a percussionist, trumpet player. Joseph's wife, Jackie, she was his wife, obviously. And then there's Paul McCarthy, Joe Bell, and Ken McCluskey. So Ken McCluskey got the role in the film The Commitments as Derek Scully. He was the guy who played the guitar in the butcher and blew himself up in the scene in the film. That was him.
Yeah. All right, yeah. And you were the Dublin 11, it was D11, but that's it, the postal code at the time.
Yeah, English.
If you were starting it now, you'd be sort of A94GFW or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's it. We never mind that. Anyway, let's go to the Wicklow documentary that you made. Why did you make this?
Well, the reason was because everything becomes inquisitive. When I wrote the book, The Promise Maker, I took Frankie from the Lower East Side of New York. He's born in the Lower East Side of New York. He comes to Dublin at the age of 5 in 1935, and what would have been known as a city with the worst slums in Europe. But anyway, and he ends up with Harry Boy and Slasher and there's Coswallop and Mary Abajaws and all these characters in there. And we cut a long story short, recently I was thinking in my head, if he came from New York to a generation that was already there, who was there before then? Who were the people that emerged? Now, the whole thing kicked off really in the Act of Union in 1801, and I do believe the catalyst that really sort of sent it all haywire would have been the famine. Because at a particular time, as the population of the country was decreasing, Dublin was increasing. So who are these people and where did they come from? So my first stop would have been, obviously, let's take a look at Wicklow here. I thought to myself, they obviously must have come up from Wicklow to start with. And I found that Wicklow had the highest inter-migration than anywhere in the whole nation. So the big sort of migration that would have come into Dublin in the 1800s would have all come from Wicklow. Now, not everybody obviously came from Wicklow, but then I began to start saying, well, what was Wicklow like? And then I started looking at the workhouses. Now, there was 3 workhouses in Wicklow, and the detail of all the historical accounts that is about Wicklow and the impoverishment that was there in the 1800s is absolutely massive. I only really scratched the surface with the documentary because it's absolutely huge, right, what went on there. And then you had, of course, as mentioned in the documentary, Elizabeth Smith and people like that who were helping basically the people of. Now, she was a very interesting character. You could do a documentary on her alone. She was very instrumental with working with the people of Wicklow and the help that she brought to them. She was very compassionate, obviously. She had a major problem, I think, with Catholicism. She was a Scottish woman, but however, in saying that, she hadn't got a problem with Catholics because she helped them. You know, so that was me basic entrance into thinking about doing a documentary about where they came from, and I was really taken back by the whole history of Wicklow when I actually started researching.
Very good stuff, George. Where would the workhouse? I think there was there one in Glencree and one in Rathdrum, and
no, one was in Rathdrum, one was in Shillelagh, and the other one was in Ballyglass.
Was it? Yeah. And what was a workhouse? What went on there?
Well, the workhouses was basically the architect. I think was a fellow called George. What was his name again? I'll come back to you in a minute. He was the architect that designed the workhouse. But basically what they were designed for was people that were absolutely incredibly impoverished, that they had absolutely nowhere to go, and I mean literally nowhere, and basically starving. So they built the workhouses so that they could bring them in and help them in a particular way. However, in saying that, they were also designed so that people wouldn't really get too comfortable there. They didn't want them to be dependent on the state. So they were designed that you go in and you go out and you don't stay there for too long. But however, in saying that, there were people through records that would have been constantly coming in and out. But they were horrible places. And then you would have had a situation. There was a thing called, what was the name of that? Oh, the workhouse howl. Because it was said that you could hear the howling from the workhouses, where they would have been more so with the children when they were separated. See, the parents, I think, would have been separated, father, mother and child. And the children obviously would have been howling. And then obviously they had them walking, hence the whole story of Oliver Twist, Charles Dickens, what was going on in England at the time, where Oliver would have been in that particular case. There is another interesting one. See, Dublin became, in the 1800s, one of the governors said in Dublin, would the people of Dublin please try and help the orphans of the streets of Dublin? So a lot of these kids probably would have came up from Wicklow, where their mother and father would have probably died, and they would have made their way barefoot up to Wicklow. But the thing about Wicklow, outside of, particularly at that time, was that they were an English-speaking people. Outside of it, really, like over in the west, they would have been really Gaelic-speaking of that particular area. But in Wicklow, they weren't. They were actually English-speaking. So when they arrived in Dublin, they would have had, at least they would have had the language of, they would have been
able to fend for themselves. So in the documentary, what would we see? If I sat down to look at it, George, and people hopefully will, what do they actually see?
What you see is one of the most interesting parts, I thought, was that I'll go into the history of it, basically, just a broad synopsis really of Ireland in a sense, and then bring it into the whole story of the shillelagh, the stick, which led me to another idea and another thought. When I remembered in the gangs in New York, Brendan Gleeson, the monks, he carries his shillelagh around with him, and he marks it. If you've seen the film, for every person he kills, he marks the shillelagh, he marks the stick as basically it's a trophy. And in the end, obviously, Bill the Butcher, played by Danny Day-Lewis, takes her off him and kills him with it. But however, the stick itself, the shillelagh, that became infamous among the Irish as a weapon of choice, but also a weapon of warfare. And obviously, through Scorsese's research and the research that they would have brought to making the film, which is based on the book, which was written in 1927, I think it was, The Gangs of New York, which is basically about a predominantly Irish neighbourhood, where the Irish were horrendously, they were criminalised, they were basically in the sense of borderline barbaric, which is really strange because, and then the other thing is that when you do research on that, you find that the whole historical thing about the gangs in New York and the Irish is that the Irish were the first immigrants to organise crime. They were the first New York gangs in America. But rather than saying that, and it's down to the fact that these were all victimised, famine people that got off the boats, they were terrible deaths and they turned to crime. That's not exactly true, and the reason it isn't is because in 1825 the first gang to be sort of documented in New York was a gang called the 40 Thieves, and that was in 1825. That wasn't the famine time, and they were all of Irish descent. And then the gang that emerged out of them into the 1830s, 40s, again before the famine, would have been a gang called the Kerryonians, and they were all from Kerry. So nice. when the famine people from Ireland arrived in New York, it was already a city that was infamous with crime from Irish gangs.
And this was ahead of the Italians. Listen, George, we've run out of time talking. I could talk to you all day. This is so interesting.
No problem at all.
In the meantime, where's the best place to view the documentary?
YouTube. You get on YouTube, A Nation's History.
A nation of a history. A history of a nation. A history of a nation.
Part 1.
In there, George. We'll talk again. That's brilliant, George. Well done.
Absolutely. Thanks very much, Declan. Have a great day.
You're keeping well. Good man. Thanks very much.
God bless. Thank you. Bye. Bye.
George Fitzgerald there on YouTube, A History of a Nation is where you find that. That was pretty interesting, wasn't it? Good man, George. All right. It's the morning show at East Coast.